Welcome back to BAS 121. We're going to take the credit approval decision database and work on some classifications here. So here's the credit approval database, and like I say, I'm using an updated one because I'm not sure the one that came, and I'll give you that. But you're going to use the same techniques regardless. You might just get different answers. So the first thing we have to do, obviously, is take some of our categorical data and turn it into numeric data. So if we say this equals, we'll just say if this equals y, then 1, otherwise 0. So in our case, 1 means they own a home. 0 means they don't own a home. We can fill that down. The decision, I'm going to say equals if our decision equaled, I don't make sure I spell it, approve, a 1 for approval. I'm going to say a 5 for disapprove, just because when I make my bubble chart that the book talks about, if I make it a 0, it won't show up on the bubble chart. So if you're having trouble with that, that's why. Now, why am I getting all 5s? See what I've done. Oh, I spelled approve wrong. Okay. So that's important to look at your data. I hope there. Now I've spelled approved right, so now I should get... Okay, so now I've set this up with numerical and as home and decision as numerical data. Now, this bubble chart that the book talks about, it's kind of a neat tool. It's a 3-dimensional bubble chart. So if I make my x-axis credit score, I'm going to hit Control, and my y-axis years of history, and my size of my bubble be my decision. I've highlighted those 3. If I now go up to insert other charts, and I go to this 3D bubble, I get this, which doesn't look anything like the book, but here's a couple tricks we can do. If I right-click on one of the bubbles, I format my data series, and rather than making each scale bubble to 100%, let's make it 20%. And now let's change this scale by clicking on that, and in fact double-click on it. Format axis. Rather than starting at 0, let's start at a low score of 400 and fix this maximum to 900. This is going to make our chart look a lot more like the one you see in the book. The book takes a few leaps of faith here. So now it's looking very similar to the bubble chart that's in the book, even though our data's probably slightly different. Notice the big bubbles over here represent our reject, and I made them 1 and 5. I'm a little bit older. I need big bubbles to see the difference. And you can see the small bubbles over here. So if we simply said, came up here to home and said, I want to go insert. . If I inserted a line at 640, which I'm drawing a blank as to how to do, insert, shapes. I take a line, I approximate 640 like the book said. Notice here most of my data is to the left. So if I said approve I could say, now that I've learned where these are, everything over this way, approve. Everything over that way, disapprove. That would be a very simple algorithm I could use. And notice I would have a few I'd have a few points that would be misclassified. Looks like 1 there, looks like 2, 3. So I'd have 3 out of 50 misclassified, which is 6%. Right off the bat, that's a pretty darn good model. Now, we could try to get fancy by bringing in this length of service and drawing a line, but we've got a pretty good model right here just at the simplistic 60-40. And then we could do a very simple pivot chart to see how many of these are misclassified. So that's the start of using, that's probably the most simplistic model for classifying. We just looked at our data. We just did a very simple bubble chart. And we came up with some very simplistic rules so that then we could take new data down here and we could simply say, for our new data, our decision is going to be, we're going to say if our credit score is greater than 640, then we're going to approve. Otherwise, we're going to reject. I'm not going to worry that I put reject and didn't capitalize it for now. And then we could just fill that down. And now we would have a rule based on our classification rules that we developed with our data up here. We did a bubble chart. We did a very simplistic rule. And we could calculate our misclassifications with a pivot chart, which is another example in the book. I think you know how to do pivot charts. If not, let me know. And we applied it to new data. So the power of classification over clustering is I can now take my model or my classifications and I could apply those classification rules to new data that comes in. Now, the drawback to this is I've only used one data point. So I'm probably going to have higher misclassifications than if I find some methods, which we'll go over in the next video, that are a little more sophisticated than simply a bubble chart in developing an algorithm off the bubble chart. Hope that helps.